The Guided Goals podcast gives you the tools, direction, and resources you need to pursue your passion project. I'm Deborah Eckerling, Project Catalyst, and this is the Guided Goals podcast. Our guest today is Rick Clemons, and we're going to talk about getting yourself out there and speaking about your passion project. Rick makes ways for people who've got it going on to get it going more by helping them dig their diff. Rick, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about yourself?
So I guess it was about 15 years ago, I found myself in a really unusual space where I'd been laid off, was wondering what was next, and then took what was next, which was working for a .com, and then about 5 years later, found myself once again on the street corner going, I need a job. And at that point, I decided I was done. I was going to figure out something to do that I really wanted to be doing instead of building other people's businesses and helping them be successful. So I spent a couple of years just being a consultant, doing marketing and branding work, kind of popping in and out of companies that were in the software industry, social media, all that sort of stuff. And then I realized what was happening needed to happen in a different way. And what was truly happening was I was starting to help other people step out of their closets. And it didn't really surprise me because I had actually come out of the closet myself as a gay man in my late 30s. And suddenly I realized I was actually pretty good at this. And I was really good at helping other people step out and really start digging their differentness and who they were in their sexual orientation. But now as I roll that clock forward, every client I've worked with, whether they're gay or straight, the work I do with them is really about helping them step forward in their most authentic self and to really dig the differentness they bring into the world. And that's what I do now with my Point One project and my Dig Your Diff podcast that's getting ready to launch and my Coming Out Lounge podcast. All that stuff is guided towards helping people really step into their most fully expressed self.
Fantastic. And that's partly why I picked this subject, because we know you could talk about a lot of different things, but one thing that I know you've been really working on is developing your speaking. So for people we've talked about speaking and podcasting and all those other good things, because people who have a passion project, subject matter experts, you can't keep it to yourself. You need to get out there and talk about it. So what recommendations do you have for people to get started speaking?
Well, I think the first thing is to know that everybody's got a story to share, and your story is unique to you, and your story actually has application in lots of different places. So don't be afraid to share yourself and to get really creative. You know, I came out late in life, as I said, and I've actually taken that story and my journey and turned it into a lot of different ways to help other people come out, whether they're coming out as an entrepreneur, maybe they're coming out as a cancer survivor, possibly they're coming out to say, I no longer want to be sitting in a corporate environment. And I've taken those things that I learned coming through my own closet doorways to say I'm a gay man, and I've now used those same principles to help other people like really step forward into who they're meant to be, and that has now become the platform of my speaking. I speak on a platform that is all about coming out and being truly who you are, and I've actually created it from the book title of my book that's coming out soon, and my speech is called Frankly My Dear I'm ... And so I can take that lead in and I can say, frankly my dear, I'm an entrepreneur, frankly my dear, I'm a cancer survivor, frankly my dear, I'm a stay-at-home mom. And I can actually adapt the entire speech to any audience that I'm speaking in front of.
That's fabulous. So you've taken what could be, is a big umbrella in and of itself, and you actually expanded it to include anyone and everyone. So you've got...
Right, and it took me a while to actually see that I had this beautiful, really beautiful story that could be adapted. And as soon as I saw that and started getting comfortable in my own skin to take that story and tell it in different places, the doors started opening in a lot of different ways.
Okay, so I'm thinking from what you're saying, step one is to get your story, is to get what it is that you are speaking about and adapt it to helping people.
Well, I think that's actually the very second step. I think the first step is to say, my story is worth telling. I've got a story that's worth telling, and get really clear that you want to tell this story. Not everybody's meant to be a speaker, but what I think is really cool is every one of us can tell a story. And it doesn't matter if you're telling a story to 10 people or you're telling a story to 5,000 people. If you've got a story that you want to share, start sharing it. You don't have to share it with a huge group. Then start to take the story and go, how can I apply it to different groups? If speaking is part of what you want to have in your little arsenal of talents, I would definitely start to adapt the story to where you think you might be able to use it in other places.
Okay, so looking for places to speak, what would you recommend?
Anywhere, anywhere, anywhere. it's
Oh,
it's kind
okay,
of like
okay. Can
it's
we
kind
get
of
a
like
little more?
pouring yourself out, so to speak. But I jump at a lot of different opportunities. I'm very blessed that I started with a speakers bureau in the Southern California area that was very specific
Mhm.
to the gay and lesbian market, but it has put me in front of hundreds of thousands of college students over the last 4 years. And I've used that to start to catapult. In fact, I'm starting to do some speaking in different colleges and universities outside of the classroom setting. And then I look at business opportunities. I look at where other people are speaking. I look at local organizations. And I listen to what people are saying when I'm at a social event. You never know when somebody may be saying, yeah, we're doing this event and we're still looking for a speaker. Hello, I'm here. Let me tell you what I talk about. So that a lot of it is being very intuitively listening to what people are saying and not being afraid to pick up the phone dial for the conversation and say, hey, I speak and this is what I speak about. I'm wondering if you would be interested in having a speaker at your next meeting, your organization, your training, whatever it may be.
Okay, so opportunities are everywhere, and if your ears are open, you will find things to jump at.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to jump. Don't be afraid to go speak in front of Underwater Knitting Association. If they need a speaker, go for it.
Okay, so if they need to get better at their goals, I should be targeting underwater knitting
Sure, why not? I
organizations,
mean, it's all about practicing yourself.
adapting.
The reason I bring that up is, I speak consistently at college and universities in classrooms. I use those classrooms to polish my speeches. I take different bits and pieces out of my core keynote speeches or my core talks, and I workshop them while I'm in front of those students. Yes, there's always a through line of what I'm going to say at the end, what I want to deliver home, but I take bits and pieces of it and keep working. And it's a great way to kind of get your mojo going and get your voice and really know what works and what doesn't work. So don't be afraid to go to some of the weird spaces and speak.
It's sort of like the stand-up comics. They start at like the really really small
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
they just don't go straight to late night. They've got to work their magic and their
Yeah. Where they can.
information.
And don't be afraid to speak in different formats. I mean, right now we're speaking. This is a
I
really
noticed that too.
it's kind of ironic. We're talking, but we're actually having a speaking thing going on right now.
Hmm.
Hop on some podcasts, do some webinars with some people. Look for people who may be doing like an online telesummit or something like that, where you get to have these kind of conversations because it's part of practicing your voice, being consistent, allowing things to happen, giving space for communication to occur between you and someone else. And in this moment, you get to deliver part of your own core story. I mean, my core story I've already shared at least 3 or 4 times
Yeah, I did notice that you did that, and it's
because
yes,
that's what I do.
go see. It's not just a podcast; it's an example.
It is.
There
It
you
is.
go. And
Absolutely.
so, when speaking, what are some of the mistakes people make?
Not paying attention to their audience. We're there, and it's not about us. It's about the audience. And I think a lot of people get up on stage their first few times and go, okay, I got to do this perfect. Well, that's true. You want to deliver a really good speech, but remember, you're there to be of service to the people who are in that audience. I don't care if it's 5 people or if it's 5,000. You're there to be of service. Breathing, pausing, giving room for things to sink in. The pause is the most powerful thing to me in a speech. Whether you're delivering something very serious or you're acting like a fool and going, yeah, I'm going to drop my pants in front of these people to make a point, and then you pause because they're like, they got to process this. I think too many people rush over what they've just delivered and they don't give the audience time to catch up. And the third thing that I would say is really, really important is to know it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be the way you did it in that moment.
See, I'm making sure this was your end of your speaking and
Yeah,
not a pause because
exactly.
I completely get it. It's all about practice.
It is about practice, and I'm glad you brought that up because, the phrase is practice makes perfect. In my world of speaking, I say practice makes your passion come alive. You may not get every word right. In fact, I don't use scripts. I write out kind of an outline and I practice through the outline. I practice doing things different ways. But I always trust that in the moment that I'm about to walk out onto that stage, and I actually say this to myself each time I'm about to go, this will be what it's meant to be. And boom, there I am. Because if I get really hung up on what's the exact word I'm supposed to be saying right now, what's the exact point, even though I know the flow, if I get really hung up, and this is just for me, but I know if I get really hung up, I will freeze, I will start to sweat profusely, I will start to jumble my words. And instead, because I say this will be what it's meant to be, I'm totally relaxed and I walk out and I own the stage, I own the room, which is something else that I would say if you're going to be doing this on a, professional, semi-professional basis, learn how to own the stage, the space, own the room, own the audience in a loving way, but always remember you're owning in a way of being of service to the people who are there to listen to you.
That sounds perfect. So any other tools or tips or resources that you recommend?
Sure. One of the tools that I use a lot is a warm up. And that can be anything from doing something like this to literally massaging your jaw, massaging your throat a little bit, opening your jaw and your mouth. Breathing into the chest so the chest expands wide, breathing into the diaphragm. There's some great exercises, just look them up on the internet. I'm very fortunate that I went through some very powerful mentoring over the last couple of years with a guy by the name of Michael Port, who just is about to release his book actually this fall. It's called Steal the Show. I would highly recommend picking up that book. The third thing I would say that most importantly is to trust yourself. Trust yourself every step of the way when you're speaking. Because when you can trust yourself, and I guess really one of my Rickisms, when you trust yourself to be yourself, everything is possible.
I love that. That's absolutely fabulous. Okay, one more thing and then we're going to wrap up. Personal, professional balance is so important. So what do you do to achieve balance?
I've really worked really hard around this area because as a coach, so I started as a life coach and I still do coaching quite a bit. But between coaching, podcasting, writing books, writing blogs, and speaking, my life is pretty full. And then that's just my professional life. I'm also a husband. I have two kids, one in college, one in high school. And then I have things that are my passions, like cycling and wine drinking, not at the same time, even though I have
Good.
been known to do that every once in a while. But this balance thing is about drawing your own boundaries. So for me, I have drawn the boundaries of I coach only a couple days a week. I allow one day to be my writing day. I give myself room for the other day to be my speaking. And that means that I may be working on speeches. I may be dialing for gigs. It just, but it's very focused stuff. And then the other days are kind of, I pick up whatever else. The podcasts are done on certain days, all that stuff. But I keep everything kind of in their own little buckets, but I'm not real rigid about it. But by saying, okay, this is where my focused effort is, it makes things move a lot smoother. I'm also very, very committed to my personal time. I have on my calendar when I go to the gym every day, I do not work past 7 o'clock except for one night a week. My weekends are my precious time. And no matter how much a client will beg me, no matter how much somebody might want to pay me to do a speech, well, actually, if they paid me really good, I would take a weekend gig. But it's my sacred time, and I really hold to that. And that's how I keep my boundaries in place. But there's one thing that actually drives all of that is I ask myself, will my happiness be sacrificed if I do this? And if I get a yes, my happiness will be sacrificed, I have to look at what I'm about to do really closely and see if it's worth doing and putting my life out of balance.
That's a really, really good motto
It's a
to
toughie
go
to
by.
learn too, but it's a
Well,
tough one to start to live by too. But when you can start to actually ask those kind of questions of yourself, just in asking the question, you take a pause because you're not just rushing forward and go, okay, yeah, let's go do this. If you take the time to ask yourself the question, will my happiness be sacrificed by doing this? It gives you the moment to breathe and it gives you the moment to think through it.
that's wonderful. These are fabulous, fabulous tips, and I thank you so much for being on the Guided Goals podcast. Now,
Loved
before
it.
we go, we need to give some homework and
Okay.
assignment to our listeners because I want them to get off this podcast and go do something. So
Yep.
I'm thinking they should just find one person to tell their story to today or tomorrow if you're listening to this late at night. What do you
I
think?
think that's a great idea. And don't flip out that you have to have your story perfect. People love stories. They love connecting with people. And if you ever want to really connect with someone, the best way to connect with someone is to tell them a story. So I think that's a great homework for them.
Okay. And it's all about your passion project. It really is all about figuring out what you're passionate about and
Hmm.
sharing it so it gets out there. So,
And
okay.
you don't have to have just one passion project either. I think a lot of times people get really stuck on that. It's like, no, 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 you can have lots of passion projects. I mean, I love helping people come out, but I also help people find ways to dig their differentness. And I also love helping people figure out what they want to be when they grow up, so to speak. There's lots of different things that I love doing, and they're all part of my passion. So I let each one of them kind of reside in my world, and I balance them out, and I let them do it. And then I go ride my bike and drink wine, and everything is good. So there we go.
Okay, so the personal homework is to sometime in the next week, because we're realistic. A lot of the people listening, or is what I think a lot of people listening, they have a day job or they've got their own business and they've
Yep,
got their side passion project or projects. So take an hour and do something for you. Have some me time. And
absolutely.
granted, you should do it more than once a week, but if you're really crunched up, at least do it once a week and
Absolutely.
schedule your time so your alarm goes off. So, your homework is tell your story to someone, find some me time. Thank you so much, Rick, for
You're
joining
welcome.
us for the Guided
Loved it.
Goals podcast. Me too. And everyone else, go out there and just go for it.